that's just told me that recording's in progress, so we should start to see people joining us now. So welcome, everybody. I'm just going to give it a minute or two for everyone to log in, locate the login details. So if we could just so that I know everyone can hear me okay, if you could maybe just pop where you're joining us from in the chat, that would be really useful. Let's see if my sound is working. So yes, if you've just joined us, it would be great if you could just pop in the chat so I know that everyone can hear me. Oh, I've had a couple of questions. Oh, as in the question and answer, brilliant. Oh, Barcelona, West Sussex, hello. Fabulous. Got Bismarck, Worcestershire, Stourport, Pegasus Group, Birmingham. We're expecting a fair few today, so I will just give it a couple of minutes before I introduce myself and my guest. Okay. Right, yes, if you're just joining us, if you could pop in the chat where you're joining us from, and maybe if you could just let us know the reason for joining us today, that would be quite interesting as well. Whether it's to learn something about the process or whether it's because your business is implementing it. It'd be good to know why you're joining us today. Learn about the process and costs. Brilliant. Tick, tick. I've got those in my presentation, so that makes me happy. Interested in learning more about the ISO process? Great. Hi from Milan, Italy. Just getting acquainted with the whole process for your company. Excellent. Well, hopefully I can help you out with that today. Increase existing knowledge. We are implementing it. Excellent. And there is going to be opportunity for questions throughout the webinar. I've got quite a bit of content to get through, so I'll try and answer all your questions live as best I can. I might have to come back to some at the end. Hello from Singapore for guidance on implementation. Brilliant. We've got quite a international following today, which is excellent. Just going to give it one more minute. And whilst I do that, I'm going to start to share my screen. Hi from India, just for knowledge. Brilliant. So I'm going to share my screen. So if everybody could just let me know once that appears. If you can just confirm if you can still see my screen. Okay, I'm going to get started. I've got a fair few of you on already. People might be joining us. But like I said, I've got quite a bit of content to get through. So I want to make sure that I spend enough time explaining all the important bits. So I mentioned earlier, I have a guest with me today, Andrew Lee from Jobs 22. Andrew's just giving you a little wave there. We are going to be doing a bit of a question and answer interview style with Andrew a bit later on. So just a big thank you to Andrew for joining us today, and also thank you to everybody who's logging on live today. And brilliant, you can see my screen, so that's great. Got notification of that. Okay, so I'm going to get going. As I said, if you do have any questions, you're probably all familiar with Zoom, but there is a question and answer function, so please do pop your questions in there. I will be keeping an eye on it and trying to come to that live, but obviously if I don't get a chance, I will try and get to that at the end. So without further ado, my name's Jennifer. I'm the Managing Director of a company called ISO Quality Services, and we are leaders in ISO certification. Just by a little bit of introduction, we're a family-run business that specialise in helping SMEs improve through the implementation of the management systems, as well as our consultancy and training services. And we operate completely internationally, hence why we have a good international cohort with us today. We are, I think at the last count, have worked in about 27 different countries. So we're quite familiar with kind of implementing all over the world, not least thanks to this new remote way of working, which has made that a lot easier for us. So just a bit of background about our mission and our values. So we aim to inspire organisational improvement and efficiency by providing unparalleled support. We allow customers to put ISO at the heart of what they do. And then we've just listed on here what our core values are as a business, and hopefully some of that ethos correlates with you today. And what we do is we provide, for those that aren't overly familiar with us, we provide a complete ISO implementation consultancy and training service, taking customers from initial assessment right the way through to certification. So we really do the whole spectrum there of services. And we aim to remove the stress of ISO implementation. It's often associated with quite a stressful process of implementing it. So our aim is to try and remove as much of that as possible. And today I'm going to be focusing on what we consider to be the 4 core standards for any kind of business-to-business operation. So that is the 9001 quality, 14001 environmental, the 45001 health and safety, and the 27001 information security. So I'm going to be touching on each of those. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to just cover off what is ISO. So ISO stands for the International Standards Organization, and it's a certification. The certification is a seal of approval from a third party that a company is running to this recognized management system or this recognized framework. The idea is to provide consistency and control and direction for a business. And as I said, there's the 4 core standards, which I'm going to be kind of talking through in a bit more detail. All of them aim to provide consistency and control and direction, and being internationally recognized can help with international trade as well. So they're very much commercial decisions for businesses as to why they take them on. And I kind of split the benefits into short-term external benefits, so external factors kind of looking like contracts and tenders, so the ability to apply for public sector tenders or even private sector tenders. It can be a prerequisite in most occasions now. So a lot of the time when people are contacting us to implement the standards, it's because they have a contract or a tender that they wish to apply for in order to grow their business. It can be from a credibility point of view, so instantly can provide credibility to prospect clients if you are displaying it on your website or putting it in your tenders or your applications for work. It can allow a business to have that kind of credibility, and people understand that they're being audited, they're being checked by a third party. And also from a marketing perspective, it can have a subliminal marketing effect. If you've got it on your website and your competitors have also got it, it brings you up to a bit of a level playing field with those other organizations. If your competitors haven't got it, it can give you a competitive advantage. However, I think what's more important long term for a business is to understand the benefits that it can bring from a kind of an internal perspective. So we've got things on here like it can help improve employee retention. So employees know what's expected of them, or there's duty of care with some of the kind of health and safety standards, for example, can help provide that peace of mind to an employee that they're working for a dutiful employer, and therefore improve employee retention, which at the moment, especially in the UK, we're finding the wave last year of the Great Resignation, that's really kind of key on the agenda of a lot of our clients, is to improve employee retention, and the standards, it's not as well known, but the standards can help with that. What is more well known is that it can improve customer satisfaction, especially the 9001, which its true focus is around customer satisfaction. It can improve a company's ability for growth, and that's through that contracts and tenders, but also through putting in those frameworks and that consistency, and that kind of, as we said earlier, about the control and direction, understanding what direction the business wants to go in can help a business grow. It can provide protection for the business, especially if we're looking at the information security management standard, the ISO 27001 as an example. That's all around providing protection for an organization. And also organisational stability. Having controls and processes in place allows an organisation to operate even if there is a changeover of staff or even management. So it's kind of a well known that these standards just provide that kind of foundation of strength and structure to a company. And I would say the first step in implementing an ISO standard a business needs to take is decide which management standard or standards that they need to implement. There are some 20,000 different standards out there on the market. Some are product-based, some are management system-based, but the 4 that I'm going to talk through today, I would say, are the most popular in terms of most well-known, most recognised, and definitely the ones that appear most on public sector tenders. There's lots and lots of different standards specific to different industries that are very niche, but the ones I'm going to talk through are your kind of your more broadly known and arguably the most important to look at first, I would say, if this is your first time of looking at these for your business. So each of these 4 core standards operate to what's called the Annex XL structure. And what all that means basically is that there is a set of standard clauses. There is 1 to 3 as well, but those are kind of more formative standards, things like scope. These are the ones that really are bespoke to an organisation. So we've got context of the organisation there, leadership, planning, support, operation, performance evaluation, and improvement. And sorry for any of you that are frantically writing down notes, which I imagine a lot of you are, don't worry, because this is being recorded. So if you needed to come back to this at any point, and we can always share the slides with you if you wish as well, which we can make sure we've got your details at the end for that. So this is the structure that all of the 4 core standards I'm going to talk about operate to, and there are some specifics within different areas of these. So things around support operation, for example, depending on the standard, depends on the requirements. But what this does allow is there to be easy integration between particularly these 4 standards, but also any of the other standards out there that operate to the Annex XL structure. And that's important because we are seeing more and more companies implement dual or even triple, or in some cases we have clients who have 5 or 6 of these different management standards, just through the nature of the work that they do. And this really cuts down and creates efficiency there with regards to how they collect evidence against these standards. It's not doing 6 things differently. It's about kind of streamlining it and really integrating those management systems together. So 9001, arguably the most popular standard, although in the last couple of years with changes to the GDPR, information security and cyber and technology coming on leaps and bounds, there's an argument to say that actually 27001 information security is also up there with one of the most popular, but I would hazard a guess that 9001 is still the most widely recognized standard out there. It's a quality management system, although you could replace the word quality with business management system, and it is really kind of designed to support you in meeting your customer needs, deliver a consistent level of quality and satisfaction, help you increase profit potential and market share, help you solve problems quickly and efficiently, and most importantly, make you feel in control of your business. And customers do hold a greater level of trust and confidence in a company which holds an ISO certification. So this is probably why this is your foundation standard, I would say, with regards to how people implement them. People don't always implement them in the same order. So we've had many clients who implement, say, an environmental management system prior to a 9001 quality management system. But if you were to go kind of to the book and logically, I would say that this is your foundation standard, really. And what I've done is I've pulled out clause 8 for each of these 4 core standards, because this is the real part of the standard that differs from standard to standard. This is the one that has the most significant differences between the different ones. So I thought it was useful for you to kind of see what was kind of the part of that clause. So for example, with 9001, operational planning and control needs to be evidenced. requirements for products and services, and there's a few kind of subcategories in there which I won't read out. I'm sure you can all read those for yourselves. Design and development of products and services, control of externally provided processes, products and services, and production and service provision, and then the release of the products and services and the control of non-conforming outputs. So these are the kind of the key elements that really differ between, say, the 9001 and the 14, where there is the most difference in terms of workload when implementing. As I said, 9001 is kind of, think of it as your building block, and is the kind of the most logical route and foundation for your business. So if you don't know which standard it is you're looking at implementing, this is normally the kind of the one that people adopt. Okay, so 14001. So this is around environmental management, obviously big at the moment with the fallout from the COP26, which I'm sure you've all been reading up about. So this is one that we've definitely seen further interest in this year, and I think it's going to be probably one of our most popular standards kind of going into the next 5, maybe even 10 years, as people are looking at their environmental management and sustainability, and as those are creeping up higher on the agenda. So with this one, it's around the control of your business impact on the environment, being more aware of your environmental responsibilities and enhancing your image, both in your local community, but also, if you are a company that trades internationally as well. It uses the reduce, reuse, recycle approach, and can actually help a business cut costs, and can also increase environmental awareness amongst your staff. I think people, especially people entering the business market or the employment market, definitely have more of an environmental focus. So again, this brings it back to that employee retention. They don't want to be working for businesses that don't take care of the environment. And interestingly, 62%, there was a study done where 62% of business owners are as likely or more likely to use a business that focuses on being green. And that stat was from quite a few years ago now, so I'd imagine that that's possibly increased. And what's important about this standard is looking at the aspects of a business that have a significant impact on the environment. And that word is significant in itself when you read the standard and the requirements that are expected of you. So if we look at clause 8 for the 14001, it's a little bit more simplified than for the 9, but a lot of it is around operational planning and control. So having those objectives in place, those environmental objectives in place, and having an emergency preparedness and response strategy. So this is around what happens if there was, say, for example, a chemical leak into waters, or what would the business do in that kind of emergency situation. So these are the kind of the 2 areas that the 14001 differs in terms of the operational controls. So 27001, this is your information security. I mentioned this one earlier when talking about kind of GDPR or the kind of leaps and bounds in technology or digital transformation, however we want to phrase it. Realistically, we're more online now, even more so in the last 2 years with the pandemic, and this one's really around managing the risk to security of company information, ensuring that the business is protected against cyber threats. It's not a cyber standard. It is an information security management standard, but naturally we've gone more cyber focused, and it does work quite well with for companies who have implemented Cyber Essentials, which is the UK's kind of baseline cyber standard, if you like. It's a nice kind of next step really in that journey of information security. Coordinate security efforts electronically and physically, as well as procedurally, regulatory as well, as you can see on there on the slide. It can improve your company image as a safe business, and that's what there's a lot in, especially again in the UK, a lot in the press about data leaks and things like that. Every other week there's something that the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, bring out about that. So really important for businesses to be secure and demonstrate that to their customers. As well as meeting any data handling security guidelines that you have either regulatory in your own region. And again, a lot of comments I get about this standard is, oh, it's only for big business in inverted commas, when actual fact 80% of viruses that infect websites or hacks that are done on businesses are on small businesses, because they're the easier ones, because they don't have these sorts of processes in place. So while I think you do need to think long and hard about implementing this standard, I wouldn't dismiss it based on the fact that you think that it's only for big business. It's definitely worth exploring, depending on the level of risk that you are at with your data and your information security. So 27001 clause 8, so coming back to this operational control, so this one is very much around risk assessment. As I said earlier, it's about protection of the business. This one very much protects the organization as well as the people and the data in it. So naturally there's going to be risk assessments taking place. So that's looking at an information security risk assessment as well as information security risk treatment. I've done a couple of webinars over the last couple of years specifically on 27001. So if you wanted to have more information specifically about this standard, we can direct you there. Yes, you will get a recording. Sorry, it's just had a question come in. You will get a recording of this. So please feel free to go into your other meeting. This will be emailed out to everybody who registered via Eventbrite. So yes, absolutely, Neil. Okie doke. And finally, the fourth in our core 4, as we call them, is the 45001, which was previously known in the UK as the BS 18001. So if anybody recognises that, this is basically the international version of that. It's now got international status. And this is really around kind of health and safety management. Now, what I would say is that's changed, that the context of this standard has changed somewhat in the last 3 to 5 years with regards to not only physical well-being, but also mental well-being. So there's the standard has the ability to cope with that. And it is around being proactive when approaching your health and safety processes within the business, making sure you've got control and monitoring risks from daily business activities, enhancing your reputation as a safety conscious company, improving productivity in the workplace, and this is where the mental well-being piece comes in really, as well as promoting good occupational health and safety practices. So whilst the image on here depicts construction industry, which is is a popular standard in the construction industry, I wouldn't dismiss it if you're not in that industry, because there is a big push from government as well as employees to look at mental well-being, and this standard has the ability to flex and cope with that. In 2019-2020, 1.6 million working people suffered from work-related illness, costing 9.8 billion per year. So, poor health and safety can be expensive to organisations. And I think through the pandemic, with regards to having people off and losing people within our business through isolation or whatever it may be, or illness, has been a real big hit on organisations. So those are the 4 core standards. Going into the key clauses, the clause 8 for 45001. So kind of probably no surprises here. Looking at eliminating hazards and reducing occupational health and safety risks, looking at the management of change. So any organizational change. So for example, one of the biggest changes that springs to mind is us working from home. As you can see, I'm in my home today, and there's going to be a physical kind of issues there potentially with how your desk is set up with your DSE, but also from a mental well-being perspective as well. So this kind of the operational section of this standard looks at all of that, as well as procurement, and also procurement of kind of health and safety equipment, but also emergency preparedness and response again. So this one generally does fit nicely in with the 14001 environmental, because we've seen that same clause elsewhere already today. So kind of going on to the more of the processy elements of kind of how you actually go about implementing. So I've already mentioned the first step that any business needs to take is to identify really which standard or standards that is most important, and the reasons why, and really thinking about those reasons why. We get a lot of people approach us because they need a quick fix to a tender application or a tender form, and what I would say is that whilst yes, okay, you might need to do that, realistically businesses should be implementing for those more longer term strategic benefits that I mentioned earlier, and the reason that is because this isn't a plaster over a problem. Implementing an ISO management standard doesn't just shouldn't just put a tick on the wall or a tick in the box for that tender. It should actually be a complete strategic direction of a business, and it should be viewed as a long term, and all of those long term benefits you're actually only going to achieve if you have this in mind for 5-10 years plus. But the process actually, in terms of how you go about implementing the standard, and there are a couple of different routes, but I'm just going to talk you through what I consider to be the route for SMEs, or the main route for SMEs, would be, as I mentioned, choosing a standard. You can opt to do more than one at a time. We regularly implement dual standards together, so some popular combinations would be 9 and 14, so quality and environmental, 14 and 45, 9 and 27. They're just a few of the combinations that we regularly implement, and because of this Annex XL, they do quite nicely dovetail in together. Sorry, just a question. I think the esports industry would need to focus on implementing 27001. Yeah, anything that has a high level of data or a high level of risk to its data, 27001 would definitely be. I think more and more companies over the years, if they've not looked at it before, I think we're all about data and how much information we store, and we're all wanting to make sure that we comply to our data handling regulations within each country. So yeah, definitely. I think that's going to be, well, it's already showing signs of being one of the more popular standards. So sorry, going back to the process. So step one, looking at the management standards, and as I've already mentioned, if you don't know where to start, 9001 is your best place to start, because all the others do really dovetail into that. Then you need to choose a supplier. Obviously, I'm going to advocate coming and having a chat with us, but you need to kind of go out there. You need to figure out what it is you want from a supplier, what's important to you in a supplier. We work very much in partnership with our clients. We're not coming in as the big bad scary auditors. We want to make sure that we work with you and implement the very best processes and procedures to kind of make sure that you kind of get the return on investment that it costs you. Obviously, there's a charge associated, there's fees associated with implementing these standards. And realistically, we're all about making sure you get that money back over the years through efficiencies and through improving and growing your business. So the way we work is, if you contact us, we'll talk through all of your requirements, really get to understand, what it is you're trying to achieve, what objectives you're trying to hit, and then we'll work out with you whether we are a good fit for you as an organization. Once we've gone all through that process and you're happy with everything, and we've provided you with costs, which I'm going to give you an indication of costs today, that's when we do an initial assessment. So we will effectively go into the business as it is, look at what you've already got in place, look at what the standard compliance says that you need to have in place, and effectively identify the gaps. It's called a gap analysis, it's called initial assessment, it's an assessment, however you want to package it up. We're looking at the compliancy of the standard versus your business and identifying where you already match up. We will identify areas for improvement. We'll also help bridge any of those gaps. So if there is any documentation that you're missing, we do have a raft of documentation on our portal, customer portal, which is at the moment somewhere almost like a kind of a template depository. So you can go and pick templates for that particular standard that you need, which those documents then become your own, and you can edit and update them and make them fit for purpose for your own bespoke business. We generally, on the whole, will write your manuals for you. So they're called, in the standard, they're called an overview document actually, but people will recognize them as an environmental manual or a quality manual. And actually we take responsibility of putting that together for you, because it can be quite a big document and quite daunting to put together. So part of our service is to do that for you and then make sure we include all of those compulsory procedures. This will all be done in conjunction with you, as I already mentioned. We very much work in partnership with you, or any consultant that you work with should work in partnership with the business to make sure that it's really fit for purpose and tailored to you. Once that piece is done, we will at that point, if the framework of the system is in place, we will provide certification. Once we're happy that you've met all of those requirements, we'll have left you with some action points. And realistically, that can take anywhere between kind of 6 and 12 weeks, depending on the business. And that's when you can kind of start using those logos that you'd have seen in previous slides. And then the sixth step, which sometimes people forget about, is actually this is a long-term strategy for a business, so you will need to maintain compliance. Part of every standard is around continual improvement, and part of that is therefore keeping up to date with the standards. You can't just implement it and leave it and never kind of come back to it again. So we actually ensure that we visit you every 6 months to make sure that you're not going to go out of certifications. There's going to be no fear that at the end of the 12-month certification period, you're not going to fail the recertification. So part of our service is to kind of do that health check mid-term, yeah, realistically, that's when you start building up the evidence against the kind of the processes. That's when you start to really see the kind of long-term benefits coming into play. And you know, I've had comments from customers saying that, you know, 2-3 years down the line, they hardly recognize their business for the better, and they put a lot of that down to having good processes and procedures where they didn't before. And these are established businesses. They could have been trading 10 years, and that was the time. Some businesses come to us. Wow, who we're going to speak to today came to us right at the kind of the inception of their business. So we really work with anybody, you know, from startups right the way through to fully established 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old businesses sometimes. But that maintaining compliance is a really important part, and I did want to kind of make sure everybody understood that. You know, maintaining it ensures that you achieve the maximum benefits of the standard. Yes, you might have taken it out originally for a contract or tender. However, we want to make sure that you achieve the maximum benefits and get well, realistically, the most return on investment. We want to ensure that you are continually improving your business, because your competitors will be. So we want to make sure that you're ahead of the game, and that you're always pushing things forward, and you know, making things better, and you know, being that kind of supplier of choice to your customers. Continuing that client trust, so they will have, you know, potentially started working with you because you do hold one of these standards. If you know, fail to be recertificated or decide not to kind of look at it long term, you know, there may be a trust issue there with the clients, because that could have been one of the sell points from them in you know, could have a shared ethos with them, for example. But also it maintains your accountability, especially having a third party such as ourselves coming in regularly. You know, it's all very well looking at managing it yourself internally, which you perfectly are entitled to do. You wouldn't necessarily get the certification status from that, but you can run a management system or a quality management system without ever getting it certificated. But realistically, who do you have that accountability to? And we just add that extra layer of accountability for you there. And as I said earlier, they shouldn't be seen as a quick fix to win a tender. They should be viewed as a long-term change within the business, and part of your ongoing business strategy. So I'm just looking at the time. I think we're doing well for time. So before I introduce my guest and give him a couple of minutes to get his camera back on, I just want to check we haven't got any questions so far. I haven't seen anything flash up in the chat or the Q&A. So if there isn't any immediate questions, there is going to be another opportunity to ask questions in a few moments. Right. Okay. No, I think we're going to move on to the section where you actually get to hear from one of our clients that we've recently implemented the ISO 14001 into. Andrew, thank you very much again, Andrew, for joining us today. I wonder if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, who you are, what you do, where you come from.
It's like a game show, isn't it?
I know, I feel like Cilla Black.
Hi everybody, yeah, my name's Andrew Lee. As you can see from the slide there, I work for a company called Jobs 22. I'm the head of quality and compliance at Jobs 22. And we're quite a new company. We only really sort of got going in April last year. We didn't actually go live with any contracts until July last year. So we are a little bit brand shiny new. And we are basically the product of a coming together, if you like, of a company called Angus Knight Group, who are Australian, and Catch-22, who are a very, very old UK-based company. And we get involved in government contracts. Our parent companies are involved in social enterprise, welfare to work, all that good stuff that helps communities and people overcome barriers, find work, education, social care, you name it. And we were formed to bid for a specific contract from the UK government, which is the Restart programme, helping people get back into work. We will be bidding for other contracts, which I'll come on to in a second, but yeah, that's who we are at the moment, and we just have the one fairly huge contract, but we're still a bit new at the moment.
Fab, thank you, Andrew. So my first question really is why did you look at ISO and why now? You are obviously, as you said, a fairly new business, albeit you've got some heavy hitters behind you. But what was it? Was it that typical contract, that tender, that contract that you needed? What was the reason, and why was it now?
Yeah, I mean, we are required to have ISO 14001 as part of our bid. So we contract to the Department for Work and Pensions in the UK, and part of that contract is that we implement ISO 14001 within the first year. But it's more than that, really, because as I mentioned before, our parent companies are very, very community based. They're public facing, if you like. They get involved in communities and helping people, and they have that social responsibility. People sort of look to us as being responsible, if you like, and in our roles. And we've certainly got buy-in from our senior managers. So I think it speaks volumes that we had a year to implement this, and we'd actually done it certainly within the first 6 months. It was actually before that we implemented this standard. So it's the commitment from our managers as well as the fact that we had to have it as part of the contract. It will help us in future bids. We do work with a lot of delivery partners. Where we're bidding for contracts in certain areas, we do onboard local delivery partners who know the communities we're trying to help, and they will look for that sort of social responsibility as well. So 14001 fits with that, and it was an ideal opportunity to do it right from the very beginning, really, rather than waiting until we're more well established. It just seemed like an ideal opportunity because we were setting up from scratch. We've been setting up our offices from scratch, the whole business, really. So it just fitted really well with all that implementation.
Brilliant. And yeah, I think that's a really important point about your leadership and management commitment. And one of the clauses, one of the standard clauses throughout all of the standards is leadership, and that's something that we need to see evidence when we're going in and auditing. Having that leadership commitment is really important, and it's become, I would say, since about the change of the 9001 and 14 in 2015, that became a real central focus of the standards, having that leadership commitment. So that's that's a really good point there that you make, Andrew, with regards to your own business. Okay, so I'm going to ask the question: why us? Why did you choose us? Obviously, we spoke to you at the initial instance, but what was it that made you go with us?
Initially, I mean, you were part of the mix. ISO QSL were part of the mix because you were recommended by a friend of mine who runs his own business, who spoke very highly of you. But we do have to sort of get, the standard 3 or 4 quotes and put that through our finance department and all the rest of it. And the thing that really stood out about ISO QSL was that you were the most responsive. You offered a lot of help and advice. You weren't sort of too pushy with it either, which was always good. But the package, the support package you offer for the cost, because cost is obviously a huge consideration, just beat the competition hands down, really. And because we are starting up, we were very busy. We still are, still trying to establish ourselves. But in those early stages where we were setting offices up, where we were trying to establish all our policies and processes, we were actually onboarding a huge number of staff very, very quickly, we needed a company who were going to support us through the ISO standard. It was something we wanted, something we needed, but we didn't necessarily have, well, there was me basically, and I needed all the help I could get with all the other stuff I was doing. So there were a lot of reasons, but your offering, your package, your support just really met our needs perfectly, really. And we actually are implementing 27001, and our information security manager went with somebody else and wishes they hadn't. So there's a
there we go.
lesson there. They're not getting all the help, advice, and support that I did, and they don't have. So you have a document repository on your website which you have access to with templates, with help and advice. They haven't had any of that, and it really did help me, certainly in the early stages.
Fantastic. And I think that's kind of where we were coming from. You know, the first step really is to identify the standards that you want, but also speak to someone that you feel comfortable working with. I think that's probably the most important part, because it will either make or break the experience for you, I think. You know, we might not be the right fit for everybody, but you know, if you're looking for that level of support, that's where I do you know, hope that we are.
And the support is there. If you don't need it, fair enough, but you know that you've got a designated person. So Perry is our person. So we can go to her with any questions or queries, and you get a response fairly quickly. But then if you don't need that help and support, there's not this constant barrage of you know, do you need me, do you need me, do you need me kind of thing. It very much suits our needs.
Fantastic. And going back to the process then, because I know that's something that's quite, and I have had a couple of questions. I am going to come to those after the interview, but sort of how did you find the process of implementation? I mean, you've kind of touched on it there, but, you know, obviously from what I was talking about, you know, the different steps that we lead you through, how was that for you?
Yeah, well, I think I've sung your praises a lot in my, you know, your last question, but it was you actually showed a slide with it on. The process was very clear, and each step was, you were given support at each step of the process. So that initial sort of gap analysis, because I have managed ISO standards in the past, but I've never actually been responsible for implementing before. So I was a little bit out of my depth, and you know, I did have a rough idea of what may be needed, but it's how to actually go about implementing various policies, processes, getting the documents together, identifying areas of concern within the business, and the process we went through really helped me, because if you start attacking it all in one go, you just get bogged down with it all. So that step-by-step process, the slide that you showed earlier, really worked for me, and there was just long enough between each step for me to actually complete what was required, and for our designated auditor to complete what she was required to do. But at the same time, the momentum kept going as well. So it was just long enough, but not too long, so we didn't lose the momentum. And you know, like I say, we actually got our standard earlier than we were required to, and that was in large part because the process pushed me along, but gave me enough time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, sometimes we get that comment, oh, it can happen in 6, 8, 12 weeks. And the problem with leaving it go any longer than that is exactly that. You lose that momentum, and you lose that impetus to kind of, you know, get everything done. Okay, so finally then, Andrew, any kind of key hints and tips for people looking to implement an ISO standard? I know, you know, you've got some experience of quality management as well, and obviously the business is looking at 27. Particularly, we've helped you with the 14. But is there any kind of key hints or tips that you would give to people today?
I think for me, if well, we've kind of covered this as well a little bit. Really, it's about getting senior management buy-in. If you're responsible for implementing an ISO standard or maintaining an ISO standard in an organization where there isn't that commitment, and you maybe are doing it as a box ticking exercise or purely because you need it for a contract, it becomes a real pain, it becomes a real chore. And I think if you get the management buy-in, you actually, I don't know, have that commitment to getting the standards, it makes things a lot easier. At the same time, you know, an ISO standard is a long-term commitment, and they can be very useful in sort of the reputation of your business. It adds structure to your business. It's brilliant for communication to all staff. So they are very useful. But at the same time, you do need to dedicate resource to maintaining these ISO standards. And with somebody like ISO QSL, they will support you through that, which is great. But you still need that resource within your company as well. So, for instance, I'm responsible for the 14001 in our organisation. It's up to me to keep things ticking over, and I'm that dedicated resource. So it does make it a lot easier. So just bear that in mind. If it's tagged on to somebody's job without them really wanting to do it, then it does become a chore, like I say. So I think that level of commitment needs to be there. The top management buy-in needs to be there. And I think you really need to think about why you're getting these ISO standards as well, because they are very, very useful. If you get the right ones that suit your business, definitely.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that, Andrew. That's been really, really useful, and hopefully you've kind of helped people, if they're in that kind of situation where you were, about how they go about it, and also giving them some tips there. So really appreciate that. So before we come to the questions that I've got in the question and answer function, I just wanted to kind of cover off costs with everybody, because I know this is something that most people want to look at. So I've done a very, very simplistic cost of implementing an ISO standard. Now, we are a fixed fee organization, so once we quote you and we commit it to paper, that is the fee that we will charge you. And there are other ways of implementing it, especially if you're on the larger side of an SME. But in order to keep this very simple today, I've just kind of put together what our 3 different kind of packages, depending on the size of a business, would look like. So this is based on one standard implementation. There is, reductions can be made for multiple standards. So it wouldn't be, say, for example, in the first kind of under 3 million turnover company, it wouldn't be necessarily £6,000 for a dual standard there, because of that similarity between the clauses and between the standards. We do take that into account, but just by kind of very basic, what we charge, because we are a full service organization, and actually this fee includes training as well. So one of the areas that Andrew just picked up on there is about that knowledge gap that sometimes isn't within the business, and people can get this thrust upon them. So we do understand in small businesses, people have to wear many hats, especially operations managers and people like that out there. That's a great title for just a catch-all, isn't it? But we do help with that education piece. So actually part of our service is that we put you on a training course where you learn the different clauses and the different requirements of that standard. It's a full day training, depending on the standard that you're taking. But these are our costs, just very basic. Just to give you a flavour, so for example, up to 3 million turnover business, implementation, you're looking around about £3,000. That's including that training course, and then ongoing for your 2 visits a year. So as I said, we do that midterm check, as well as the account manager, the online template depository that we've mentioned. You're looking at £1,560 a year, depending on. We do payment terms. We're quite flexible on payment terms as well. So we offer. It's not a £3,000 lump sum up front, for example. We can offer it in 2 or 3 stage payments. The ongoing fees we can offer on a monthly direct debit to help spread the cost. But this is just a kind of an example, a bit of a flavour. If you want a more kind of specific quote to your own requirements, whether that be multi-offices or multi-standard, then I would say, get in touch with us, and we'll be more than happy to provide that for you. Okay, so I'm going to come to the questions now, because we have had a few questions. So one of the ones was, when talking about quality, do we at any point need to integrate the Six Sigma concept? And I mean a company that's already implementing the Six Sigma or Lean Six Sigma into their approach to quality also need to implement 9001. So no, I would say the easy answer to that question is no, you don't have to. If you're implementing 9001, you don't also have to implement Six Sigma. What I would say is that there obviously is a lot of commonality between, Lean and Six Sigma and all these other kind of, total quality management. Some people might remember it as. There's obviously a lot of commonality between them. So if you do look to implement it, you are going to find there's some similarities there. But no, it's definitely not a prerequisite that you have to have both in place in a business. I hope that's kind of answering your question. Please pop in the chat if it's not. But no, you don't have to. You can, and there would be some efficiencies there if you wanted to, and obviously, you know, that's what this is all about, but no, it's definitely not a requirement of 9001, or vice versa, a requirement of Six Sigma, as far as I'm aware. I'm not a Six Sigma black belt or anything like that, but that's my understanding of companies. I'm not sure. We've probably got a few companies, especially on maybe the larger side of the SMEs, that do, especially maybe manufacturing, engineering, that do operate Six Sigma, but on the whole, 9001 covers it for them. So I hope that answers that. So I had another question. We have ISO 14001, 9001 and 45001. We're currently looking into implementing the 45003 welfare. Do you think this would add value, or would it be an unnecessary addition and be a duplication of our existing management systems? So I've looked at this standard because of what's been happening in the world over the last couple of years. This is something that more and more 45,000 that's more and more 45,000 series standards are coming out and about. It would be hard to answer that without knowing exactly what it is your business does, Jessica, who's asked this question. But my view would be, what's the outcome? Are you looking at implementing it because there are going to be certain differences between the 45,001? There's going to be commonalities as well, but there is going to be, as that clause 8 would be the one that you'd probably want to look at. There are going to be additional benefits to you as a business to implement that. It would be really difficult that knowing exactly what it is you do as an organization to understand what the objective is, but I wouldn't just dismiss it straight away on being an unnecessary addition. I think a little bit more investigation as to what it is the business is trying to achieve. What objective are you trying to fulfill that you feel the 45,003 would hit? There is value in all standards. Sometimes you don't have to go as far as getting it certificated. You could just implement the principles of via a consultancy package rather than having that ongoing auditing. But again, you really need to look at the objectives of the business in order to make that decision. And Jessica, more than happy to have a conversation kind of one-to-one with you on that if you would like. I'll make sure my contact details are popped in the chat afterwards. Contemporary approach to management, like agile management, do they share a relationship with 9001? Yes, there is a relationship there, in that most of these newer techniques have been based on the ISO 9001 because it's so established within the marketplace and within business. It's nearly always the go-to framework. Even things like apprenticeship frameworks are based on ISO 9001. Investors in people, that's based on 9001. So yeah, there's definitely a relationship there, in the manner of they tend to look at the 9001 and take the bits they like out of it and then, you know, adapt it to for example, the agile management framework. And then a second question, is there any software in the aid of documentation process involved in ISO 9001? Yep. We're not a software company, so that's not something we do, but there are lots of different options out there depending on your industry, depending on your size of business. Some people use, you know, software systems just, you know, simple as a kind of, you know, Microsoft SharePoint. Other people have something a little bit more bespoke to their industry. There really is kind of thousands. I mean, again, if you wanted to get in touch to see if we could recommend a business or a system specific to your industry, then they're more than happy for you to get in touch. It's not something we get heavily involved in, I must admit, because we deal with such a variety of industry clients. We wouldn't necessarily be able to keep up to date with everything there is on the market, but more than happy to kind of maybe point you in the right direction. Okay. Oh, okay. So this one's just asking about the recording. Yeah, we are definitely going to be sharing the recording with you. We tend to put these recordings out either via our YouTube channel or on our website. So yeah, we will make sure that the recording is made available to you. And I heard there was a change coming up to the standards regarding 27001. Is it going to change the whole implementation of this specific ISO? No. So we've been through many different changes on 9001 and 14 and 45, going from the 18,001 to the 45. implementation process tends to stay the same. It's the elements within potentially that operational clause. They'll probably just tweak that, make it more modern. Changes in technology. The standard that we're working to at the moment has been out for many years. It went through a bit of an iteration in 2017. I think it's the 2013 version, but it went through an iteration in 2017, and potentially another one as well, which very few changes were made. But what we tend to find with any of these is that there's more of a refinement. I haven't heard any different for the 27,001, that it's going to be a substantial change, but so I would suggest it'd be more of a refinement. But we tend to populate information out via our website as that kind of gets nearer. But with regard to the implementation, that process would remain the same. Well, history says in terms of the other standard, it would remain the same. Okay, so I think that might be all the questions, and I've had some confirmation that those have been answered. So if you do think of anything else, as I said, I'm going to drop my contact details into the chat so that you can get in touch with us, but please do visit our website. If you haven't already signed up for our newsletter, you can do so on our website, but also you can claim your free training. So we actually have a free training introductory module for each of those 4 core standards available on our website if you get a code from us. So you can we'll either send that code, we'll send that code out to everybody that was here today or registered today, but similarly, if you haven't already signed up to our newsletter, that'll be if you fill out the form on our website, which you can see here, that will automatically send that out to you as well. And that is a 40-minute introductory training on each of those 4 core standards. So, far more in depth, and there's some interactive activities that you can undertake on there as well as our website having a whole host of information and useful document downloads, videos, tutorials. So please do visit the website. Okay, yeah, I've just had another couple of questions, but yeah, I think I've answered those around about having the presentation. Yes, you can have the recording. Everybody is entitled to a copy of the recording. So we are at 27 minutes past 3 UK time, so I did promise to keep this to an hour, so I've just about done it. I just want to thank everybody for attending today. Please do visit our website. I'm going to drop my our main contact email into the chat now, so that you can contact either my team or myself. So if you need that, I'm just making sure I've spelled everything correctly. Yeah. But yes, so we'll make sure that we get a copy of the recording out to you in the next couple of days, and a copy of one of the codes for the free training as well. And like I said, if you do have any specific questions or would like to pick up any of those questions that you sent to me today via the Q&A, then more than happy to pick that up on a one-to-one. Another big thank you to Andrew. It's been really useful, really helpful. Yeah, just wish everybody a good afternoon, and thank you very much.